Put your hands together for the late morning program with your host, Namarasa.
The late morning program, episode 3. How's it going, Tulsi?
Going good.
Thanks for being here in your own house.
You're welcome. Anytime.
I'd just like to tell my viewers and listeners apologize for the lapse in episodes coming out. Lots going on. One of them being you're very. How many weeks are you now for the viewers?
I think 39 weeks. Basically any day now.
Any day now. So it's Tulasi and baby together.
Trying to get in the podcast before the baby comes.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess let's get right to it. This is episode 3, as I said before, and a lot of people have been asking for you to come on, and I just wanted to entertain that. And you're an interesting person, and
really, am I an interesting person?
You're very interesting.
This is interesting because your persona as the podcast person.
Well, I was like yelling at you a second ago.
Yeah, exactly that.
But for those who don't know you, your background's in midwifery, right?
Right. So yeah.
Tell us about that a bit.
Okay, so when I was about 7 years old, or 7.5, almost 8, my mother, she gave birth to my brother, which actually there was a devotee midwife who was her friend, and something about that experience was amazing to me. That I was almost 8 years old. I was very aware of. I wasn't present for the birth, but I was very aware of how that was like a really special thing. That first of all, a devotee can be, helping you to give birth, and then also that it could be your friend. So I was like, kind of grew up thinking that was a really nice job to have, and I always wanted to help people, being in the caring work. So yeah, when I went to university and I did a degree in midwifery.
How long did you work as a midwife in England?
Almost 3 years, and
so you've delivered hundreds of babies.
Probably, yeah, a few hundred. I mean, during the 3-year training, we had to deliver at least 40 babies to be able to qualify. And then after that, working as a midwife. And actually, I took some time out and went and did Bhakti Shastri in Mayapur. And during that time, I delivered another couple babies in Mayapur, which was something completely different.
Something that always interested me was that, they say, birth, death, old age, and disease. Birth is the one that we don't really think of necessarily as something that's miserable, or that's something negative, or not negative, but something that's but I'd like to hear from you about like your spirituality and about midwifery together. Like, how do you, like, what intertwines those, what connects those two things?
When you work as a midwife, or anyone who has to deal with birth, and yes, like you said, most people will think, oh, it's such a wonderful experience, but when you see the other side of it, the loss, many people experience, and the difficulties during the deliveries and things like that, it can actually be quite profound in terms of your spiritual understanding of the whole situation. Even just watching a C-section is like, wow, it's like, I always used to say that this is like what it looked like when Hiranyakashipu was being like ripped apart. In some ways, not really, but just that, like, the fact that someone can be like completely, their abdomen completely open, and this baby coming out, and on the other side of the curtain they're completely like awake and alert and excited. It's like, wow, like, we're not this body. Like, something so amazing as seeing the effects of general anesthetic, and or not general anesthetic, but the anesthetic for the surgery and that kind of thing. It's really fascinating.
Was there something that also about after the birth? I remember you saying that sometimes you would chant to the.
Oh, yeah. I tried to. So whenever the baby was born, like, when I was just working in a regular hospital, just always to say a little mantra in the baby's ear when I could, or even
Amazing.
just saying Krishna, or, things like that, because who knows what that baby's journey is going to be in life, and if I can give a little start in their spiritual life, then I felt like I had done my bit.
Right. And now that the tables have turned, so to say, in the sense of like now it's you who are the one who's on the other side, not the. So what is that like?
It's really different, actually. I think in one ways you feel more calm because you know a lot medically of what's going on.
Yeah.
But in another way, you kind of always think, wow, is this going to happen wrong, or is this going to happen wrong? It's kind of, you're a little bit apprehensive. But I think in general, it's always good to have knowledge. So I always try to encourage women and men, you know, to learn more about this process of being pregnant, especially as devotees, like what the baby's going through. Sometimes we're all just like, la la la, everything's fine. But, you know, the Bhagavatam gives some pretty interesting and in-depth descriptions of the difficulties that the baby has in the womb. And that's quite sad sometimes. And you think, okay, can I make that easier for this soul? Can I, you know, by chanting or by, you know, reading Krishna book or, you know, other literature that make this soul, the journey in the womb and then out transitioning into the world, a more smooth journey and more hopeful experience.
Right. Wow. So you were saying, you know, you grew up in England. So and so now that you will become a mother soon, and your own experience of Krishna consciousness growing up as a Hare Krishna or as a devotee, like what are your experiences as a, you know, growing up as a devotee, and now that you have to kind of
be a mother
exactly
myself. Yeah, good question. I should ask you that question as well. I mean, I'm sure we'd have different answers because we, you know, I feel like the way we grew up, even though we're kind of at the same period now and we see eye to eye on many things, like we had quite different upbringings in some ways. I think it's what I really appreciate about growing up in a devotee community and near the temple.
I mean, this could help, you know, people who are to have children and just to see what our, you know, mine as well, our viewpoints and our aspirations for in this day and age. Not, you know, because life has changed since even when I was a kid.
Right. It's scary actually how social media and you know, the things that kids are into these days, the things that kids know, even, it's like scary to see that that innocence is going much earlier. And it's shocking. But yeah, I think for me, what was really important, because I went to Gurukul for, you know, until I was about 10, and then that was at the temple. And then
for those who don't know Gurukul, what is that? So
the school that was run by the temple, and you know, we went through regular school subjects, math, science, English, everything, as well as learning scriptural, you know, the Bhagavad Gita and you know, learning about Srila Prabhupada's life. And we would have assembly doing kirtan. We would have kirtan lessons, you know, learning the instruments and things like that. And then obviously when there was a big festival, we would have the day off of school, or we would do a special festival within the school. Right. So it was all centered around, you know, being a devotee, but also learning the regular subjects that were required for the, you know, country, you know, and we would have examinations the same as regular kids and everything like that. So I think what was great about that was it gave me a really strong foundation that, okay, this is who I am, and all my friends were devotees. And not that, I mean, I had other outside clubs as well that I went to, you know, like where I interacted with non-devotees or, you know, people who are different religions and things like that. So that was, you know, good to have that exposure. But I think knowing who I was from an early age and having that philosophy given to me in a way that I could ask questions when they arose, I felt that made a really strong foundation for me to then go on and be able to explain to others. Because then when I started regular school, I know for everyone it was a different experience. A few of my friends found it more difficult, the transition between, you know, regular school and Gurukul. But for me, at least I knew how to explain my life choices, and I felt like I had life choices. Like, you know, explaining to someone what Ekadashi is, or, you know, why I'm not eating regular food today. Like, it was a really kind of...
So you would explain that?
Oh, yeah.
See, that's so different from my from my
What was
experience.
your thing?
Mine, okay, I went to public school my whole life. I went to 3 days of Gurukul in Vrindavan. I couldn't cut it. I was crying every night, and they took me out. They said, my parents also weren't, ready to leave me in India while they were back in the States and everything. So my experience was that I kind of most of my friends knew I was vegetarian, but beyond that, it was really I was very private about my life. I mean, and I see that in the way of our workplace now, the way you interact with
my colleagues,
your colleagues, and the way I interact with them. Like, mine is also very much like, now I'm just like, okay, everyone knows I'm vegetarian and everything, and that I don't drink or anything like that, but nothing about my religion per se. Like, I haven't communicated at all. But then you for example, I seen a video of your coworkers. You show your coworkers like you singing at my Pukirtan Mela or something. Like, I would die if someone saw me like that.
I mean, I think it's just like, it depends on your personality as well.
Right, yeah.
Because I mean, for example, my experience and my sister's experience were very different because of our personalities. So
yeah.
I think that's one thing, and everyone will have a different journey and a different way that they feel comfortable to express themselves, depending on their friendship groups, depending on their experience of growing up in Krishna consciousness as well.
Yeah. So going back to the child, raising.
Yeah.
So what would you want for our children per se?
Well, people have started asking my mom. Now my mom's come here, to help with the delivery and everything.
Yeah.
So people are like asking my mom, like, "Oh, so how was she as a child?" I'm like, "Ooh, don't ask that," because I feel. I mean, she will also tell you that I was a pretty wild child. In terms of, I had a lot of energy. I would, run around, climb the trees, and things like that. And I mean, not that it's really a bad thing, but I see it with other children as well, that, they have so much energy that my concern is that I won't be able to engage that in a constructive way and keep my child kind of, benefiting from this experience of being outside of the womb and things like that. I don't know. What about you? What do you think?
What do I think about what?
Okay, so what do you hope for our children or for the future?
I definitely have a fear. There's definitely fear there of just anyone coming into this crazy world. It's just very fearful.
Right.
But I have a lot of faith in community. I have a lot of faith in the devotee community,
right?
More specifically, and I feel that, like, the way I grew up, the way it was around other kids and other parents who saw me as their own, and that was really an amazing experience for me growing up, being like a Sunday schoolie, not a public schoolie, not a guru coolie, So
stigma.
Yeah, and I think for our children that's something that helps with that fear.
So just going to that point, having been through the public school system and me having been through the Gurukul, I know we've discussed this before.
Yeah.
What would you want your children to go through the same experience that you did, or
No, definitely not. I don't think so.
Why do you feel that?
I think it's changed a lot. Public school has changed a lot since I was in school. I'm going to be 33. So that's quite a while ago, and I see how it's changed. And if you can, a lot of devotees can't homeschool or gurukul or whatever, so they try their best. But I think personally, for my own, I wouldn't want my kids to go to public school. I would want to either homeschool them or put them in gurukul somewhere, or start a gurukul. You were talking about something that was one of your dreams and aspirations.
Yeah.
So that's something we would look into seriously. I wouldn't, to answer your question, no.
Right. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think it's hard for young parents these days who are looking for that, because I feel like all the bad rep that gurukuls got in the past history, many of them shut down and many negative feelings. But, for me, having had such a positive experience in a gurukul, and it was a day school. We didn't stay there overnight, and our families lived nearby. We all lived around the temple close by, and we had an international board of teachers, and we had international students, you know, from all different places in the world. And that's how the devotee community is. It's pretty much always going to be mixed a lot of the time, and I think it's a really unique experience to have.
So yeah, that's definitely interesting. I'm just going by, I put up a Facebook post, as you saw. I asked
my suggestion to go.
I asked people, you know, what would you want to hear from Tulsi, and one of the thing was like fears or you know, of becoming parents in this age, you know, second generation parenting, second generation Hare Krishna people, midwife stories. Tell us about that time you were in the paper.
I was in the news?
Yeah, you were in the news. What was that for?
Oh, it was, well, okay, if anyone has ever had a baby, you know that when the baby's going to come, they're going to come. And actually, the midwife is not the one who, you know, is delivering the baby. It's the mother who's delivering the baby. The midwife is just kind of attending and supporting. But even if you're not ready for the baby to come, it's going to come anyway at the time that it's planned. So one time, a mother, it was her second baby, and she didn't quite plan the timing correctly. She was thinking, I'm going to, you know, and she was a little bit famous. So she walked from her house, which was just a few blocks down the street. She walked from her house to the hospital, but she just got to just outside the hospital, and she didn't quite make it. She felt the baby starting to come. You know, her waters had already broken and everything, and she couldn't move anymore. So she was holding onto someone's gates of their house, and they called up to the hospital, and they were like, we need some midwives down here quickly. So we like ran down with blankets and, you know, all the instruments that we might need for delivery, and ran down, and the emergency staff were kind of there helping her, trying to get her to sit on the wheelchair, and she was like, I can't sit down. I'm like, what? Of course she can't sit down, she's having a baby.
Oh
you know
gosh.
So I was like, she can lean over the wheelchair if she need, you know, that's how you can get her in. But no one had checked, like, you know, she had her clothes on still and everything like that. I was like, did anyone check? And no one had checked. So we put a cloth around, we just checked, you know, pulled it down or whatever she was wearing, and the head was already coming out. So I was like, we have to deliver the baby right here on the street. It was like 5 a.m. in the middle of London, and there was hardly anyone around, luckily.
And that was in the paper because she was famous?
Right, she was an actress, so that was interesting.
That is so cool.
I mean, obviously we didn't know that until afterwards, that she
you didn't know who she was.
You know, but it was quite cool. It's definitely one of those stories that you remember, and
of course,
you know, suddenly like the baby's coming out, and like holding the baby on the street, and I'm like, oh my god, quickly get the stretcher and everything like that. But
switching gears a little bit, you know, I know you're, you know, we all know that you're a very accomplished kirtaniya. You do a lot of kirtan, and what is your experience of how do you deal with like praise? Someone wanted to know.
Yeah, that's
you're praised a lot.
Yeah, it's hard, and I'm sure you also have a similar experience. It can be difficult to, you know, the thing is, when someone praises you for the kirtan, like they're expressing their gratitude for something that you've done. You know, in some ways you're providing a service for them, you're connecting them, even if you're not, you know, I don't consider myself in any way advanced, and I'm not just saying that to be humble. What I feel is that, okay, everyone is given certain talents in their karma, and for some people that they might have talents which can be used in devotional service. So, you know, my family are pretty musical, and that's something that has been given to me, and I've, you know, able to do kirtan. So number one, we, you know, any talents of ours are Krishna's doing, they're not our own. So that's one thing to understand, that, okay, I'm accepting this praise, but I'm understanding that it's not my skill. I shouldn't feel proud that this is something that I've done. And then at the same time trying to be gracious to the person, because it can be really hard, especially the whole fame thing, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes in India, when you're doing different kirtan festivals, it can be overwhelming, the amount of people that come to you, and this celebrity culture that.
What do you think about that? What do you think about see, like, for example, like, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything,
Right.
but I know we've discussed this in the past, like, being qualified and then becoming getting praise, and, like, for example, you're not initiated, so you do kirtan and everywhere, and everyone praises you, and then there's like a celebrity, like you were saying, celebrity culture and stuff. Where is the balance? Do you find that you need to balance it, or like, what is your experience in that?
I think it's a really fine line, like what your expectations
Like, should people be initiated? Like, what's your...
I mean, I think, like, there's different levels. It depends what you're going for, and
What do you mean going for?
so someone who's organizing a kirtan festival, their thing is that they want to create a nice experience for everyone, a nice mood, and the purity also there. So I don't necessarily think that it has to be all initiated devotees, although I think it's, if you can have that and those people are available, great, why not? But I don't think that it should be like, okay, you can't because you're not initiated, you can't lead a kirtan.
Right.
And who's to say where people are on their spiritual journey? Maybe they're not initiated yet, but maybe they're very strict sadhakas, and maybe they are practicing devotees for many, many years. Who knows why they're not initiated? Maybe it's something internal that they're struggling, and are we there to discriminate them against that?
Yeah, but then also, to balance that, like, is that, so then what if they're, they're taking that, they're taking that praise and all that, and that's probably not helping in their spiritual life. So do you find in your own life, like, that it affected you? Like, did it affect your own view of yourself?
Well, for me, I felt like, when someone's praising you so much and you feel inadequate, it creates more humility.
Right.
So
Interesting.
it's, in a way, it's actually more beneficial for you. And maybe that's my karma. Why I've been put in that position is to create humility, so that I'm not like, oh, I'm a great kirtaniya and I deserve all this praise. It's that people think so much of me and I feel really inadequate.
Right.
So I it's like really helpful, actually.
Right. Going back to the, you're not initiated and everything. Do you find that it's harder for people growing up in Krishna conscious to make those commitments? For those viewers and listeners who don't know what we're talking about, in the Hare Krishna movement, we have certain initiation vows that we make for, chanting a number of mantras and rounds, they call it, and also following certain principles. And so what I'm asking Tulsi is regarding people who have grown up with that. Their parents are committed devotees, and sometimes it can be hard for them to, because they've grown up with it. I mean, from my own experience, I can say that it was difficult because that's all you know. And you have to actually join Krishna consciousness for your own self.
Yeah. I think, people tend to have this view of second generation devotees that would, no one ever gets initiated and no one wants to advance in Krishna consciousness. And I think in general, there is a general aspect of that. And then I think obviously on an individual basis, there's many, many examples that I can think of that don't follow that. For me, I think the difficulty was and is seeing initiation as a very high standard for myself, or creating the high standard, not seeing it as the beginning. Initiation is the beginning of my journey. So, it's kind of disappointing when you see new devotees coming and going, not coming and going, but joining, and then within a couple of years they're initiated, and you're kind of like, well, I've been a devotee my whole life. How come I'm still not initiated?
I remember you gave me that example. Someone told you.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. Of basically, to be born in a devotee family, we have some some good karma from a previous life, or our spiritual journey is continuing. So whatever we got to in our spiritual life in our previous life, the example that was given was like digging a hole in the ground. When you dig in the firm ground, whatever hole is there, then at the end of that life, it's filled with sand. So then digging that sand out the next lifetime is very easy. So for many people who have, second generation devotees, taking that sand out is kind of like just sailing through Krishna consciousness. I find it easy to follow the principles, maybe, or some people find it easy to chant or easy to read Srila Prabhupada's books. But then getting to that hard ground again, it's like, oh, now I need to start working on the hard stuff. So it can seem to some people that, oh, we're just breezing through and we don't find those things hard, which it's also, again, subjective. But yeah, getting to a place where we're actually trying hard to further our spiritual life, that's the challenge, I think, for second generation.
Do you feel that initiation is like some sort of, that goal? Like, for example, when you reach that goal, do you think things will be different, or like, because right now do you feel marginalized or from not being? Do people say, oh, she's not? Most people don't know.
No,
or?
I have the opposite. For me, at least, most people assume that I am initiated, and I think that's just because I'm very active in the temple. I know many things. Like, I've had good training at home. I've had time in Mayapur and the Deity Worship Academy and different things like that.
Right.
I've had a lot of experiences in my life that have given me a certain kind of knowledge, and also I feel like I have always determination to do things in the proper way. So yeah, I haven't had too much issues with people thinking, or discriminating because I'm not initiated, which you could say is actually a detriment to my initiation journey, because if people are treating you like you are initiated, obviously not second initiated, then what's the urgency to take initiation?
Right. And there's also I forgot what I was gonna say.
I mean, how do you feel, having been initiated at, what were you, 22 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Do you feel any sense of that, oh, I have the upper hand, or that I was glad that I did that, or how is it now? This is like 10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's been a struggle, but it's directed my life in a certain way. Like, I've wanted to, from a young age, I've wanted to just know what my direction was in my faith. So not being initiated, I would have kind of looked here and there and all, not knowing where I was going, but not knowing whose shelter I was going to be under. And that really kind of directed me of a place where I want to go, where I want to be, who I want to be like, example to follow type of thing.
Where do you think you got that impetus from? Like, I know you were saying when you were younger, there were a lot of brahmacharis at the temple.
Yeah.
Do you feel that was the thing, or what do you think was the thing that kind of really spurred you to feel like initiation is what I need to do? That's going to get me to the place I want to go, or put me on the right path.
It was definitely associating with devotees at a young age, devotees like who are converts basically, and seeing their enthusiasm and wanting to have that same enthusiasm, living in the temple and doing the morning program and going out on book distribution or Harinam or whatever. You get that bug from just being around others who want to do that. And so I was blessed to be around devotees like that. So I've always wanted to be like that. And I'm glad I was. That was one of the greatest experiences, because it kind of shaped me to who I am today. Someone who's, always struggling, but always moving forward and knowing what my goal is, not, and not being easily, discouraged and all that. I mean, that goes into my next, question for you, is that, like, most people say, like, how do you stay so positive, and how do you stay so happy? Because everyone says you're a very happy person.
And am I?
let's not go into that.
Nam sees this other side of me. Yeah, I don't know. I think again it's just a personality thing. Like I've always felt very positive. I feel emotions very strongly. I think that's probably to do with, my star sign or whatever. So if I'm happy, I'm very happy, and if I'm sad or upset, then that also is very extreme. But I feel like I very easily can go through different emotions. So I don't know. I guess when I'm around people, I have the sense that I never want someone to feel upset because of something that I've done, or that some way that I've, or concerned about me. So I always have this happy outset because I feel that people then reflect that, and it makes other people feel happy.
Right.
So.
I remember the point I was saying back to initiation, that can it be also that it's a social pressure?
Which way?
Meaning like
taking initiation or
no, like if you don't pretend for example, like everyone's just talking about initiation all the time. Initiation, you should get initiated, blah 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 blah. But you don't know so much about it. But you're like you just want to do it because you want to just be a part of the social,
I think
part of the movement or whatever.
Definitely, I feel that there's that pressure, but it's not backed up by, what is needed to. For example, like you feel pressure to take initiation, but you don't know why. So the education should be there. Why do you need to take initiation? I think maybe that's not emphasized when we're younger. And also we think it's always something that older people do. The initiation is like, oh, it's older. And then I don't know, growing up in Krishna consciousness, you always feel like a child. I know you were saying the other day when we were having a seminar and someone was saying, oh, the youth, and they were actually pointing to the much younger kids, and you were like, wait, are we not the youth anymore?
Yeah, no,
we're like,
in
our late 20s, 30s, but we always feel like the youth. So when are we going to grow up in a way? When do we feel that we've reached a point where we're mature enough to take initiation? Maybe that impetus is not...
I mean, this movement was started, by
20-year-olds or younger.
Or younger. Yeah, so that's definitely a good point.
I wanted to bring up one point because I thought it was really important. The struggles, for example, for a married couple who are devotees, the struggles of keeping your sadhana, or like, I know you used to always say to me about flying your own plane. Like when you're a couple and you're both trying to practice Krishna consciousness, how hard is that to maintain a certain level and also, also support each other? I don't know. I'm asking.
You're the interviewer now?
Yes, I'm helping you out.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that there always has to be something I struggled with in the beginning was being judgmental and having unreal expectations about things.
We struggled with this a lot, I think.
We definitely did. Yeah.
And maybe you thought something of me. Maybe you were part of the gang that were like, oh, Dasi, she's amazing devotee.
No, I still think you're amazing devotee.
Huh.
But to quantify it, or or to say that someone is not a good devotee because they're not initiated, I think is unfair and not exactly according to our teachings and stuff. But back to that point was that I think it's important that it's talked about what the expectations are, but also that if they don't meet those expectations, it's not like the end of the world. Like if you're trying sincerely and you're helping each other to get to this goal, then it's great, and each other, we shouldn't make each other feel guilty about maybe if you're not able to meet that those standards of sadhana or principles or whatever. There should be a very much like something I always think about is that marriage is so much about being a person who's good at forgiving, because there's always going to be times where we get on each other's nerves, or you say something that you didn't mean or something. But if you take everything completely personally, like it said, it should be like arguments should be like a lot of thunder, not like lightning.
No lightning.
Because thunder, who said that? I forgot. But thunder is like very much just loud noise. But lightning is actually what destroys things.
Right.
And I always loved that because, you know, I always think about that, you know, because of course we have arguments. Every couple does, but it's important to keep that in the forefront.
Yeah, I think very much like initiation, it's the beginning of a journey, and I think, you know, when people don't realize that marriage is also a very long journey, they expect everything to be a certain way at the beginning.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I know stuff in the first year of our marriage, like how difficult it was and how we were trying to overcome all these different, you know, difficulties, even just getting to know each other in a different way, like, you know, more closely and spiritually, like working out how to navigate our spiritual life together. I felt like it was like, looking back, we've been married 5 years this July, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, yes, thank you. Yes. Thanks for that. It's amazing, actually, just looking back and seeing how difficult it was at the start and how far we've come and what level we're at, which I know someone was asking about, like having humor as the part of the marriage. And that's so important. Something I always tell people. I mean, we're lucky that we find each other funny, at least, but
funny looking.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that to you. Yeah, I think it's really important to be lighthearted and not
to be friends, first of all.
Yes, to be friends.
Is very important, I would say.
Yeah, and respect each other. You know, there you can joke and you can have arguments, but I think when you respect someone, you don't go past a certain point, and that can also be something you have to learn at the beginning. I remember certainly saying things that I was like, you know, you were like, whoa, like, why do you need to go there? And I was like, ooh, sorry. Yeah. But yeah, look, now it's like, okay, I know how this person is going to react if I say this thing, so let me not say it and let me like calm down first, or make a joke, and then, you know, kind of break that fight that's going on, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think humor is definitely such an important part of life in general. Like, we can't take ourselves too seriously. Like, you really need to like loosen up and be, you know, also for devotees and just
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, for example, this podcast, like, I feel like it's a really good way of just kind of making light of things that people find difficult, you know. Definitely the kinds of questions that people were asking, even just, you know, for this podcast, was really interesting to see the things that people struggle with, or even people's perception of us, or a perception of me, and you know, there's a lot of need for making light of situation when there's a lot of suffering in the world, and there's a lot of suffering for people trying to be devotees and feeling pressure, or feeling that they can't quite make the mark and things. And when they see that, okay, you know, oh, the amazing devotee Tulasi, she's a normal person. You know, people who know me know I'm just a regular person. I'm a little crazy sometimes. I'm a little this and that, and they see that, okay, we're all actually going through the same journey. And
definitely, I think that's super, you know, it's definitely very valuable to have you on and to hear your, you know, your viewpoints on things like this. I think that I want to also discuss one of the things where the direction of growth in ISKCON. I don't know if that even makes sense. The direction.
You mean like where ISKCON is going? Like, I think the question was like, where ISKCON is going. What do you think about that? Is that what it was?
Maybe. That actually sounds interesting.
What about you? Why don't you answer that?
No, that's a whole other podcast.
I don't know. I always have a positive kind of thing.
Me too.
I feel like
ISKCON, with all thy faults, I still love thee.
Exactly. I think their tendency also is to blame ISKCON for things, when what is ISKCON? It's a worldwide organization, you know, for developing Krishna consciousness, and for, you know, which has a huge range of devotees from very, very new to senior, or people who have been around for a long time but aren't so senior.
Yeah.
You know, and I think when we try to blame ISKCON or things in general, I think it's some niggling thing that we have that we are unhappy with, and we're not doing anything about it.
Right, yeah. That's a good point.
Like, just for example, like when I moved to this country, it was a very different and big experience for me, having come from a certain kind of community, very big community with lots of resources and lots of very different kinds of people that I really loved being in that community. Then coming to this community, which is much smaller and has a huge heart, but in my mind it was like, oh well, I was like comparing between the two temples. Oh, they do it like this and they do it like that. I think it. Looking back now, like there's so much now that I appreciate about being here, because I've realized when I started putting the effort in to be involved more and to change things that I wasn't happy about at the temple, then I felt that ownership.
Definitely.
That if I try, other people will respond. Like even just one thing, like the kids, like I had such a great experience growing up. For example, just like dancing in kirtan, I felt like the kids weren't engaged. So I started holding their hands like, hey, why don't we dance in the kirtan? Dance like this.
Like for Sunday feast.
Like for the Sunday feast,
right.
For the Gaur Aarti or whatever. So, and through that, like seeing how enthusiastic the kids became, and also then their mothers were joining in now, and then you're on the other side with all the male devotees. And like, I don't know, it's just been such a positive thing that now everybody's dancing together, and it's just like so sweet. And I'm like, such a small thing as me just taking ownership, like why don't I just step out and start the dancing off, things like that.
Let's talk about something like you being a woman and in ISKCON.
Where are you going with this?
No.
Okay, go on.
Like
what aspect of it?
No, like that you could. We're talking about the having a positive attitude and everything. Do you ever feel marginalized as a woman, or do you ever feel like let's go with that.
Personally, I have never really felt any like restriction because I was a woman. I don't know if that's because I'm a kirtan leader, and that means I'm still kind of in this position that...
I think it does have a lot to do with that, but...
Yeah?
Yeah, continue.
I was always like pretty tomboyish as well, so I'm not a shy person. I was always in the dramas in school. I was always, kind of at the forefront. So, but at the same time, like how sometimes in some temples they'll have like the deity greeting, and like, okay, the men go forward first and take darshan, and then it's kind of a rotating thing, and then the women come afterwards.
Right.
Like, I know that bothers some people, but I don't really feel bothered about it. Like, I understand the culture of kind of keeping men and women separate, especially in the temple. It's like you either one has to go first or the other has to go first.
Right.
Like, I know in some temples they would, help support in other ways, but I don't know. I never felt really bad about it. Although I definitely think it's important to support women and children in a way that they feel that they are important. Because I know at some temples, like I've seen all the women and children go and take prasad first.
Right.
And I thought that was such a lovely thing to kind of implement. Right. I know it's not possible at every temple depending on how things work, but things like that I think are great.
Do you think that's because of your what your parents raised you, or?
Probably. I mean, I feel like in some ways I was kind of raised like a boy. Like, my mom was a top book distributor and my dad was a Harinam leader. So I kind of I think they're quite masculine roles in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. So
that was kind of normal to me. It was like my mom does it, my dad does it. It's not like there's no difference there.
Yeah.
But, if I look, I guess if other people didn't have that same experience, I mean, maybe they would have a different thing to say. But
do you find weirdness? One of the questions I remember on this thing was like, do you find anything strange, or that you felt any experiences being in ISKCON but in an interracial marriage?
Oh.
I mean, you're so Indian though in some ways. But also you're not in some ways.
Okay, so I actually sometimes my colleagues or people who are not devotees, sometimes they ask me about this,
Yeah.
and I kind of say, well, although we're different races, we were brought up in a very similar way.
Right.
So I mean, what about race makes things difficult?
I think.
Because I mean,
for me, it doesn't. It's just funny that one time you came to my job.
Oh yeah.
And then someone, I put it.
Because I was wearing like an anarkali or something.
No. You were Then I told, I think on Facebook, I said, oh, Tulasi came to visit me at work or something, and then someone commented, was like, was someone's reaction like, does your wife know about this person?
I remember. They're like, because until then, your coworkers just probably assumed that you were married to an Indian girl.
Yeah, right.
That's really
oh my
funny.
God, I found it so funny.
The other woman.
Yeah, right. But no, I personally haven't found anything weird about it. I think it's beautiful and I think it's wonderful, and I think that's just what makes ISKCON
Right.
international society. Like
Yeah.
someone from a whole different side of the world can find a partner on the other side of the world, but they have so many similarities,
Right.
and they can just come into another community and plug in because
same way.
because it's the same. Prabhupada was a genius in that way that
Yeah.
every temple is basically, the programs are both mostly the same.
Yeah. And we had that experience when we did traveling across the world, and in every single temple we went to, it's like you just feel at home in many ways because the same program is happening, the same bhajans are being sung. Like,
Yeah, love
it's
that.
amazing to
Love
see
it,
that.
yeah.
But I think, I think there can be challenges, definitely, depending on how much you are similar or different to whichever races are engaging with each other, and how much you see yourself as that race. I mean, I'm always like, oh, I'm from England and we do things like this, and you're from America. I'd say that is more of a difference between us.
No, that's so true. Yeah.
Than the
Yeah.
race thing,
What country you're from?
Right. And
America.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
No, you answered the question.
Oh, you don't want me to continue talking?
What else did I want to ask you?
Time for blueberry.
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks.
Oh, don't break anything. Let's go to the quickfire round.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's go to the quickfire round. Quickfire round. Joe. Nimai, where's my sound effect, bro?
Sorry, dog. I'm working on it.
Still.
I don't pay the big bucks for nothing. What quality do you admire in others?
Outgoingness, maybe.
You admire that in other people.
And I don't know how to say it, like people being genuine.
Genuine.
Genuinity.
Ingenuity? Ingenuity?
Something
No.
like that.
Being genuine, yeah.
I feel that's really valuable. I feel very protective if I feel someone's not being genuine, which again...
How would you know that, though?
Well, again, going back to the whole fame and celebrity status of the kirtan thing, I'm very guarded sometimes when people are like, oh, Haribol, and this, that, and the other. And like, some people are really genuine, but I don't know. I have a feeling sometimes that I feel, okay, is this person actually, appreciating, or are they just seeing that like I'm a famous person, and so maybe it comes from that, like just not wanting to engage with that celebrity.
Right.
thing.
What quality do you dislike about yourself?
This is hard. Not that it's hard. There's plenty of things that I dislike, but I think, sometimes as you, like, I love to be friends with everyone, but I think sometimes I struggle to go deeper and really open up to people. And
Really? You dislike that a lot about yourself?
I mean, I
I'm just pulling you like, I know.
I crave deep relationships, and I think sometimes we don't push or make the effort to have deep relationships. We assume that everyone is gonna be, always texting us and starting off the conversation, whereas
Right.
we should also make the effort always to try to value our friends and go deeper in those relationships, and Krishna conscious relationships as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, these are not very quick answers.
That's okay. Name 3 things you do when you think no one is looking.
3 3 things I do. I don't know. Do you?
I
have
don't
any
actually
ideas?
understand that question. Name 3 things you do when you think no one is looking. Well, like going to the bathroom. I
Or
hope
like
no one's
picking your
looking.
nose or something. I know that's what somebody does when they think.
Let's skip that. I don't
Yeah.
like that question. Thanks, John V. What is your favorite hobby?
Like outside of,
Just answer the question.
I love knitting and crocheting and like crafty things.
Nice.
It's like my,
What's the best thing you've made?
um,
Or the most intricate thing? You made like dolls and things, right?
yeah, I made some
Yeah.
toys for kids and things.
If you could speak another language,
Bengali.
why?
It's Mahaprabhu's language.
Kubalo. Kubalo, you did a great job.
Thanks.
We gonna have you on again. I love talking to you.
I hope you love talking to me.
It's so nice. Thank you, dear. I'd like to thank all my viewers, and I'd like to thank Tulsi. You could give birth any day now. It's super exciting. I'm
Just
super
waiting.
happy. I can't wait. I can't wait to see the little person,
whoever it
they
is.
are. And I'd like to thank Nimai for my tech guy. Thanks a lot, man. And let us know what you think about this episode in the comments. I'm gonna try to do more. It's just been super difficult. We got this one in though.
Yeah, hopefully
Bravo
now.
to us.
Hopefully now we'll get a bit more of a role going. We've got a few guests lined up. I'm just taking the co-host position here.
Yeah.
So everyone.
Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you very much. See you later.
Haribo.